Hello and welcome back to Seagulls Central. Thank you so much for putting on the podcast, putting on another episode, tuning into the channel, or getting your headphones on and listening to another episode. What a result we get into today. 4-0 Brighton away at St Mary's, off to Southampton, and it was an absolute battering pretty much from start to finish. A very comprehensive performance, an outclassing at times, so many brilliant individual performances, and a result which actually, in the context of Brighton not being able to beat lesser sides, so to speak, a very impressive one, and one that we can all probably walk away from St Mary's feeling very, very confident. Moves us up into the back into that top half, not that we weren't already, but kind of solidifies us in that top half of the table again. We're well on course for that kind of 8th place push fight that you want to call it. European football is really, at this point in the season, is a possibility. The fight is there, despite a couple of weeks ago it looking a lot more ropey and hairy. We're right back in it. We're putting strong performances out. Our team's looking really good, and we do just have some absolutely fantastic technical players, which of course we'll get into individual performances. But I think it's games like this. Of course, Southampton are a poor side, and probably and likely. Maybe not likely, but there's a chance they might even kind of beat that Derby record of, 11 points in terms of the worst ever Premier League finish. They were a very poor side. I think with that said, they attacked okay, but I think defensively they were terrible. They made, I think, a bad decision in changing their manager, despite the fact that I didn't quite understand why he was so steadfast in playing the way he played in Russell Martin. But anyway, the point I'm making is it is only Southampton. However, we've struggled against teams like Southampton. I hate that phrase, teams like Brighton, but those kind of banana skin games have proved to be banana skin for us over the last kind of couple of seasons, and this was an example of going away to a side and being able to do a job with them. And ultimately, I think if we're being completely honest, at the end of the day, I think Southampton probably are just so poor that if we had lost to them, it would have been an absolute joke. Watching the Brentford game against Leicester on Friday night, I mean, good God, that was another stark reminder of that awful T2 draw that we ended up getting at the King Power early on in the season. Leicester looking like a pretty poor side, and Buonanotte coming off the bench and looking like one of their best players, and it's just baffling that he can't get in that side. But there are some poor sides in the Premier League this season. I think we've put in an incredible performance. Standout players, so many. Belabor, brilliant performance again. Minteh and Mitoma, excellent. But for me, crucially, it was that front two of Rutter and João Pedro. He just shone. They were fantastic. With the news of Danny Welbeck being out for this game, Veltman out too, we had to make some changes. Those two came in and were just excellent. The partnership they showed was fantastic. But every man really was brilliant. I thought Lamptey, particularly in that first half, was excellent. Jack Hinshelwood, fantastic. Got his goal, was so good. Kate played for about 80 minutes or so. Came up right after he got his goal. Webster and Van Hecker with Dunk still out were very, very good. To a man, everyone was very good. Ayari as well. Everyone was very, very impressive. So yeah, I'll get into it. Brighton made 2 changes from the side that beat Chelsea last week on Valentine's Day. So Jack Hinshelwood wasn't playing central midfield alongside Carlos Belabor. Jack Hinshelwood had been moved to right back due to Joel Veltman being injured. So Veltman was out, Hinshelwood had been moved to right back, and Ayari was in. And then João Pedro, I was just, honestly, so much has happened with this game. I'm struggling to even think and get my mind straight for a minute. But João Pedro came in for Danny Welbeck, who apparently has been carrying a light injury, picked up in training, but they're hoping that he'll be back for Bournemouth on Tuesday night at the Amex. And hopefully, so I think, yes, oh my God, I'm going mental. Tuesday night at the Amex, Bournemouth coming to the Amex. Welbeck's looking like he'll be fit for that. The talk was essentially they're kind of leaving him out of the squad for this game, letting him rest up and bringing him back in hopefully for Bournemouth, because he's a player who's been so impressive for us. But with that said, João Pedro and Rutter up front against Southampton were absolutely fantastic. Dynamic, build-up play was brilliant. Link-up play was excellent between those two. It was like they were telepathic at times. The press from both of them was brilliant. I think, as we've seen in the past, but particularly with this side, as we've seen this Southampton side this season that we've seen, they're a side that really, they want to play out the back, but they're not always fantastic at it. And actually, if you press them and put their defenders under pressure, the whole unit really from the midfield and defence can be kind of broken down quite easily. And we exploited that really from minute one. Brighton's press throughout the game was excellent. Some of my notes here was like, we've got very good possession for the first kind of 10 minutes of the game, as you'd expect, but actually our pressing was a real clear point of the way we were playing in this game. You could see it from Minteh and Mitoma on either wing, Rutter and João Pedro. That front four, even the midfield, were pressing so high into their midfield. It felt like we were really pressing as a team throughout the game, really, but particularly in that first 10-15 minutes, we set our stall out in terms of how we were clearly planning on playing. And, as I say, it's a way that I think you've got to play against Southampton. I think at times in the past, it was a way teams played against Brighton in the early days. But it was so obvious as that's how we need to play. And the fact that we've got pace in behind, that can run in behind, that can win the ball back, and a dynamic attack where everyone's fabulously technical. And when we do get those 1 or 2 or 3 chances after they make a mistake, we can be ruthless and clinical with them. And that's what we saw we were. There was poor defending, made it quite easy and open for Brighton at times with some of their goals. And actually, with the kind of slightly higher level of technical ability in some of the attacking players that Brighton have, it's in the end quite easy for them to score goals. And I think that's what we found. Pedro, I think particularly, after him coming back, obviously been on the bench for a couple of games, Welbeck starting up front with Rutter being excellent. I've heard a lot of talk this season about, particularly when things were poor for Brighton with those defeats a few games ago, the Forest defeat, etc., around body language, João Pedro. And I think he really has got some pelters this season. I'll be personally honest, I don't massively believe that was hugely warranted. I know this whole body language thing, him at the Amex trying to get the fans to G themselves up and stuff, and they go, well, you shouldn't be doing that, you should be focusing on your own performances. To be honest, I quite like that kind of thing. I think even in the games where he's been supposedly poor, I think back to the Everton game, he got quite a bit of criticism. There was another game as well around Christmas time, I remember he got quite a lot of criticism as well at the Amex. I think it was Brentford maybe. To be honest with you, I think in all of those games he's been pretty good. I don't think he's had stinkers in the way that many fans have made out he has. Yes, he's maybe not been as clinical as he was last season, but at the end of the day, I think what we're seeing from him is still that smart intelligence of play as a number 10. Now, I know lots of people say he's best when he's not playing as a number 9, when he drops in a little bit. And yes, he is. Like, we saw the best of him against Southampton when him and Rutter were kind of interchanging between 9s and 10s and 2 10s, 2 strikers. They were being quite fluid in their attack. And maybe clearly Pedro's best role is when he can drop a little bit deeper. To be honest, I think we've seen flashes throughout the season of the fantastic link-up play. Yes, he hasn't scored goals, but he's really good with link-up play. He's really good at winning the ball back. He's really good at holding on to the ball, moving his body and kind of shaking and jinking around to kind of get out of the way of players and being quite clever with his body movements. I think we saw that again against Southampton, him and Rutter excellent at that. Obviously, as I've spoken before about Rutter, a player who is a really good dribbler and can just get past players easily, but has a real tactileness around being able to kind of drive into players with his head down and weave and duck around players and that kind of slinkiness that even Baleba has. I think him and João Pedro both showed that. Rutter and João Pedro showed that against Southampton, and I think it was a really interesting attack because, before the game, and I could have seen how it could have gone differently, but, the question I asked around kind of what happens if Danny Welbeck gets injured when we let Evan Ferguson go out on loan, well, that came to fruition. Obviously, Danny Welbeck getting injured for this game and we're relying on João Pedro up front. But to be honest, I think against a team like Southampton, where it's so open, where mistakes are made, when you can press them easily, having a good pressing forward in João Pedro is what you need. And all really that you can rely on, that you really need, is technical forwards who can take their opportunities and who can see the space, run into the space and play balls into the space. And I think we were really good at that. Mitoma, his goal was from space. You think back to all of them. João Pedro's first goal, only goal, just played in by Rutter into loads of space and it's a lovely finish. So actually, I know there's kind of been a lot of talk around João Pedro, but I think we really did see him back to his best. He bursts forward really well, drives up the field with the ball at his feet in the same way Rutter does. In some ways, they're quite similar players. They're obviously very different in the sense that I think Rutter's a better dribbler and kind of is slightly more kind of weavy in his play, but they've got that same ability to move the ball up the pitch, carry the team up the pitch, drive us through the pitch, hold the ball up, bring others into play. I think it was a really, really impressive attacking chance, and we had attacking quality, and we had lots of chances in that first 20-25 minutes until Pedro got his goal. Minteh had a chance. Minteh had loads of chances, which he ultimately fluffed. There was a good chance early doors where Hinshelwood whipped it in from the right-hand side. Mitoma came in from the left-hand side and kind of shinned it. It kind of went past Aaron Ramsdale beyond kind of the far post. And it looked like that was going to be a goal. It kind of was a situation where the ball was played in. Mitoma was alive to it, was looking for the ball, and the Southampton defence just stood still. He burst into a bit of space, was free in the box, and maybe he should have done better. He kind of fluffed his lines a little bit, but it would have been an unbelievable goal if it had been scored. So there was a chance there. There was another chance with Minteh being played in by Rutter. He was completely in the clear on the kind of right-hand side, coming in from the right wing, kind of right centrally. He was completely in the clear, one-on-one with Ramsdale, with Mitoma to his left as well for a tap-in. And Minteh basically just lost his footing. I don't know if he slipped or kind of got confused about his footing. And it was really annoying because at this point it was 0-0. I was thinking, oh my God, we've got so many chances. Like, what's going to happen here? But fortunately, a couple of minutes later, we got that first goal. The ball was played in to Rutter in midfield. Sorry, the ball was played into Pedro in midfield, who brought it down really well, and then it landed at Rutter when the ball was brought down by Pedro. It gets to Rutter. Rutter does a lovely little poked pass through into just a space in behind, kind of bounced off the defender a little bit, and then Pedro carries on his run. And that's what I mean about the interplay and the hold-up play and the linking that they had, because they're both on the same wavelength. When Mitoma's bringing that ball down, Rutter's making a run. When it then lands back to Rutter, Pedro makes that run, and they're running off each other. They're playing off each other. They can rely on each other's touches and speed and pace and technicality. And basically, Rutter just pokes the ball into space in behind, and Pedro finds himself one-on-one against Ramsdale, as we'd found multiple times before that with the Minteh chance. And he's one-on-one, and it's a lovely dink. He goes for a kind of little fake shot, does Ramsdale with the eyes, looks like he's going to go bottom left, I think, and then essentially just dinks it over him. And it was a finish that we saw again with Mitoma later on in the game, but a fabulous goal. And there was some really good play after that goal as well, to be honest. I remember there was a moment probably a couple of minutes after the goal where everyone in the team, it was like, if it was a bit later on in the game, it would have been a real Olé kind of session from the fans, because the way we were knocking it about was brilliant. And it wasn't just knocking it about for knocking it about's sake, because you know, if you watch this channel, something that I find really annoying. But we were in their half, we were in their final third, and every player was just making runs in behind, giving and going, passing and moving, running round each other, getting into space. It was really, really brilliant. Lamptey, so good down that left-hand side, particularly in that kind of 15, 20 minutes, probably 20 minutes from when the goal was scored up until half-time. I thought he was so good, making bursting runs in beyond, playing the ball off of his midfielder and then making runs. You know, I think he was so good. But the whole team, and that goal brought confidence, because really we saw that Southampton were pretty weak out of possession, and they could be opened up quite easily. And it's back to that thing I spoke about when you're trying to break down a low block. And Southampton weren't always in a low block because they were at home. They were a possession-based team, as they like to call themselves. And, you know, they were having the ball. So there was a lot of space for us in behind, as I've spoken about before. In the Chelsea game last week, I think we do benefit when we can get those two wingers and our two forwards just running in behind, sitting on the last defenders, pinning them high and just running into the space off the shoulder. But we had that because Southampton were happy to kind of play with the ball on the halfway line themselves. But yeah, I thought we were really good. We made loads of chances. It could have been by half, probably 2 or 3-0. But we go in and we looked very, very good. So the second half, obviously, as you'd expect, Southampton had a bit more possession. They were a bit more confident with the ball at their feet. Only 1-0 down at this point. We came out on matches. Brighton had to suck up a little bit. I mean, in the context of the game, not really, but it was a little bit harder until we got that second goal. Cameron Archer actually did score a goal. It was ruled out, however. Not great from Brighton, but ultimately got ruled out. And then not long after that, Brighton got their second goal. It was a really, again, we talk about that pressing. Rutter and João Pedro pressing. I think it was actually Rutter and Minteh just pressing. It was so good. We saw it. And then that was basically how Brighton made all of their chances, essentially all of their chances, was just by pressing. And Rutter kind of bullies Aribo off the ball, wins the ball back from him. in Brighton's final attacking third. Plays it into Minteh. Minteh, who's there on the right-hand side in the box. What does he do? Minteh squares it back to Rutter, and Rutter has a simple finish. You know, Rutter, for a player who Leeds fans said doesn't score many goals and is mainly a kind of a creator and a kind of runner and all of these things, you know, actually, he's been a goal scorer for us. He's come in clutch many times. You think about that FA Cup bullet header. You think about all of these games. You know, today he's scoring another brilliant goal. For me, I think it's so tough because Baleba obviously has been such a good player as well. But I think Rutter's got to be in with a shout for player of the season because the way that he made that goal essentially single-handedly. Okay, Minteh obviously squared it to him, and Minteh was very, very good himself. But Rutter, we wouldn't have scored that goal without his dogged pressing that he showed. And the pair of them, it was very, very good. And I think, you know, it's nice to see a team. They were clearly hungry for goals. They clearly had smelt blood in this game, as all the fans could. And it kind of felt like we weren't going to get another one. You know, it could have been another Leicester or Wolves game kind of thing where the team get back into it. But they could smell the blood and they went for it. And that's what we saw with the pressing here. Rutter with another goal, and it was excellent. 65 minutes in, Estupiñán comes on for Lamptey. Gomez comes on for Ayari. Literally within 2 minutes of Gomez coming on, I think he got the ball. And it was absolutely brilliant. Minteh had a chance, and he should have scored within seconds of Gomez coming on. Gomez comes on, gets the ball in the middle of the pitch, drives forward. You know, there's loads of space in the Southampton midfield. By this point, it's only 2-0 down, but they're all over the place. He was able to, Gomez, just drive through their midfield, play a ball into Minteh, who, I'm sorry, should have scored. He played the ball right down the middle. Minteh on the kind of left-hand side, but centrally, did the keeper. He was in loads of space. Did the keeper, sat the keeper down, went round the goalkeeper, and was trying too hard to play it on his left foot to score it. He should have just tapped it in with the right angle on his right foot, but he didn't. He relied too much on his strong left foot, and he fluffed the chance. It was literally an open goal. He'd done the hard bit. The ball had been played brilliantly from Gomez. He'd found the space. He'd beaten the goalkeeper. He'd sat him down, and he couldn't find the finish. And I think for Minteh, it was probably just one of those games where, you know, it's just, sometimes you just get those games where you're actually kind of playing really well, but when it comes to scoring goals, you just screw it up. And I think, you know, we're not going to get into that too much because actually I think Minteh, since he's come back from injury, has looked so good. You know, since bursting back onto the scene really in that Man United game in, mid-January, his wing play with Mitoma has been so good, and it's been generally, for the most part, apart from kind of the Nottingham Forest game, etc., you know, it's been such a big part of how we've been able to look much more dynamic in attack in the second half of the season, and we found this new style of kind of really relying on our wingers. He should have scored. He should have scored in the first half. He should have scored that. That was literally a tap in. But maybe it's an immaturity thing. I don't know. Maybe it is. And to be honest, you know, I've spoken before. I think I spoke about in the last couple of games where actually I think Minteh, for a 19, 20-year-old, has shown a lot of maturity. He looks like a player who isn't just a toe tapper, isn't just a dancing winger. He can score goals as well. He's got that clinical edge when the ball lands on that right-hand side, and he's the classic Minteh position. The angle's opened up, left foot, bang, he curls and scores. He knows how to do that. This was an example. It was clearly just a bit of an off day. It all went a bit skew-whiff, and he'll be very annoyed at himself because it was a goal he should have scored. To be honest, in this game, it ended up being 4-0. It could have been 5-6. It could have been 7. It could have avenged our kind of -7 goal difference that we had picked up from the Nottingham Forest game. But it wasn't to be. But it just goes to show the kind of level of chances Brighton were making. It was a bit too easy at times. But yeah, so then literally 2 minutes after that, chance from Minteh, Mitoma gets his goal. There's a ball into Pedro from the midfield. Pedro receives it. Back to goal, plays a lovely little deft touch into Mitoma, who's running off his shoulder, plays the deft touch behind him. Mitoma's then just running through the middle with bags of space, and he's literally just been set away. He's one-on-one with Ramsdale again. So much space, we've got it again. And he does the carbon copy finish of João Pedro and dinks it over Aaron Ramsdale. A brilliant finish. Mitoma got a player who, since that Saudi Arabia kind of mooted deal, I think he scored 5 goals in the 7 games or something like that. Goals and 1 assist in the last 8 games. And since that kind of talk from Saudi Arabia. We've seen a prolific goal-scoring Kaoru Mitoma. He's looked excellent. He looks brilliant. He looks sharp. He looks like he wants to score goals. It's been a criticism of mine that he's so good at getting us up the field but doesn't score enough goals and get enough assists. He's become a goal-scoring winger, and I think that's what we're seeing this season, particularly in the last month or two with our wingers, that our wingers are scoring goals, our attackers are scoring goals easily. And it was great from Mitoma, a brilliant goal. Dinks it just like Pedro did. He had loads of space, Mitoma, but he made the most of it. And it's difficult that sometimes when you're running at the goalkeeper, you know you're one-on-one, you know there's no one around you. What are you going to do? And he made the right finish, and he's got that kind of calmness and that street smartness just to get the finish right. And then about 10 minutes later, Hinshelwood got the fourth from a corner. Gruder, who'd come on, Matsuifa came on just after Hinshelwood scored. We made a couple of changes. Edingra came on for Mitoma as well. Some Rutter had come off for Gruder. Gruder takes a corner on the left-hand side, whips it in, lovely corner. He's got really sweet left foot, went into a perfect area. It kind of bounced off a Southampton player. I think Webster went to head it as well. And it landed, dropped the ball in the box for Jack Hinshelwood, who just sweet as a nut, half volleyed it with his right foot into the bottom left-hand corner. Really sweet goal. Chests it down, half volley, bang. Lovely. Just a proper centre midfielder finish. And he was great. Played it right back throughout the game. Looked energetic, looked lively, got us up and down the pitch. Played in midfield at times. You saw him drifting. Lovely crosses into the box. I think back to that Mitoma chance in the first half. And then obviously got his goal again. Such a peach of a player, Jack Hinshelwood, for a player who's only 19, and it was a difficult game for him at Nottingham Forest, being tasked with playing in a one-man midfield. It was never going to be easy, and I don't think he even disgraced himself, to be honest, considering that, he was the only one in midfield. But, what a player, and for 19 years old, to think he's in the England setup as well. He's going to be a player who, in the coming years, we're going to see play for England, absolutely. And if he carries on like this, he won't be at Brighton much longer, because I think big clubs will be sniffing. But we had loads of other chances. I thought Diego Gomez was brilliant when he came on. I thought Matsuifa looked all right in the kind of 10 minutes that he came on as well. I think overall every player to a man was brilliant. The only thing I will say, to be honest, is I think we've got to set it in context a little bit. It was Southampton. It was a very poor Southampton side. It was a Southampton side who were on course to maybe hit the worst points tally ever. It was a Southampton side who looked so open. It looked easy for us to play through them at times. So I don't think we should... It doesn't answer all of our questions, because at the end of the day, I remember speaking in a previous show on this channel where I basically said, actually, for Brighton, this isn't our problem playing against a team who are really open and give us loads of space, like Chelsea, like Southampton. It's the teams where we can't break them down. It's the teams where they make it difficult for us. We can't break down low blocks. We don't seem to have that intensity of play. If we could have the same space against those teams in the low block, we'd probably see more results like we saw against Southampton. But with that said, it's a real nice confidence booster to continue the form for the players that they've been on, getting more goals. Players like Jack Hinshelwood getting on the score sheet, seeing that we can do it with different players. Obviously, Veltman having to drop out, Welbeck having to drop out, 2 experienced heads, and we're able to produce a performance like that. I thought Verbruggen was decent, made a couple of good saves. Webster with a captain's armband, stepping up again, a very, very good performance. Him and Van Hecke just hoovered everything up, nicely mopped, easy stuff. And I think overall a very impressive performance. And, in the context of the season, you'd go to Southampton, you win 4-0 away, woohoo, that's great. But, you don't get a 4-0 win that often. And I think that deserves to be celebrated, to be honest, with all the talk. And I've been critical of the way we play. I think we saw it again. It reminded me, in a way, a lot of the Man United game in the way we played, that our wingers was just so ready to attack at all moments. As soon as the midfielders got the ball, Belabit, Ayari, even Hinshelwood dropping in, Gomez in the second half. As soon as they got the ball, our wingers, our attackers were just running in beyond, looking for that movement. And it really reminded me of that Man United game, actually, in that sense. And it was so impressive. And Bournemouth's going to be a tough game because, obviously they had a difficult result today, obviously against Wolves. But they look like such an impressive, well-coached side, a side with fabulous individual players. A manager who clearly is going to probably be headhunted in a very similar to Brighton way that we've seen in recent years. And I think it's going to be a very challenging game at the Anglers. I think if we can come through that with a win and an impressive performance, or even just a tactical display from Fabian Hurzeler, I think it will go a really long way to changing the season, because I think there's actually really a lot to play for this season. But I think what we need to see is how Brighton come up against a team who are really, really well coached. The last one we saw, probably against Nottingham Forest, we did get beaten quite heavily. But I think there's a chance that Bournemouth, to be honest, won't sit back and won't sit in a low block. They probably will make it a little bit easy for Brighton, in the sense that I can imagine them having a lot of possession, wanting to play themselves, but they've got good defenders, you see. But I think we will have that space. We will have opportunities for Mitoma, minteh to get behind, hopefully Welbeck back and can lead the line again. Not that either of those two players in João Pedro or Rutter should be dropped, but I think it could be a game where we get a result. I kind of weirdly back it, because actually I know they're a very, very good side, and I think it's more going to be about, I think, in this game, whether we can dominate the midfield and whether we can keep the goals up, because I sort of think we will be able to score goals against Bournemouth. At least a goal or two. Just got a feeling, and obviously we saw it at the Vitality earlier in the season, that we can go and win against them. They're not an unbeatable side, but they're just a very well-coached side, and I think they might play into the way that Brighton at the moment are looking quite positive in terms of giving us space. But for this game, Southampton, a brilliant result. So many fantastic individual performances, and a result that hopefully we can take on into the next few weeks to kind of build on that European push, which is back on. Let's be honest, it is back on. So yeah, a great result. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed the win, please drop a like, get the comments in, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, or follow the podcast feed if you haven't already, and it will drop in your timeline, in your algorithm, as soon as I upload. I really appreciate all your support as always. Get so many great comments and so many great interactions from you guys. I really appreciate you getting involved in the way you do. It really means a lot, and I haven't expected it, so it's been really, really nice. And to be honest, it's just nice to chat about the Albion so often, and I hope you're enjoying it too. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching Seagulls Central with me, Adam MacDonald, and I will see you next time. And as always, up the Albion.